Good morning, traders. Today is Tuesday, July 20th. Thursday, July 20th. My name is Charles, and this is the Pirate Traders live stream. It is Tuesday. God, I'm so sorry. All right, one of those mornings. What are we looking at here? Well, yesterday, this is the daily for the SPX, and we bounced perfectly off that 50 moving average. So that's the first thing that's catching my attention this morning. As we talked about yesterday, it is very common for the market to find support at that level. So that is a first sort of positive thing to see here in the market. We can see yesterday was a B-shaped profile, which means it was more long liquidation than new money selling. We did some rotating down here and created a poor low and then had a bit of a spike. It's not actually a spike because it was inside the range, but a bit of a spike at the end of the day. And that spike was accepted by the overnight, as we can tell, that the overnight inventory was almost 100% net long, right? They had a slight pullback and then they did most of their business up here, including getting up into the gap. Okay. And you can see they spent most of the time and put in most of the volume right there at the bottom of that gap. Now, overnight inventory is 100% net long, or almost, 94% net long or whatever, but I don't expect much of a counter auction because the market has already pulled its way down to almost back to the closing price from yesterday. So what does that mean for us this morning as the market opens? Well, we're opening inside the previous day's range, so that increases the odds that the market will just need to chop this morning. For the first half an hour to hour of the day, the market might just need to grind up and down a little bit before it figures out where it wants to go. Okay, internals opening bullish, as to be expected with the overnight inventory being mostly long. So as far as levels go this morning, what I'm watching for, let me just zoom in here a tad. Okay, so obviously yesterday's high is a really important level. If we can get up to yesterday's high and break it, come back down and find support. So there'll be some resistance in there from all of this overnight trade that took place. But if we can find support and continue to trade higher, that is a very bullish trade for a gap fill, right? The market doesn't like to leave gaps behind unfilled. So even if the market wanted further sell-off, it wouldn't be unreasonable for it to come up here, backfill the gap, find some resistance, and then continue its further sell-off, okay? So the gap fill from yesterday is a very high probability trade. So if the market is able to get up in here, gets through this node of volume, comes back down, finds support, this is a very good long trade to fill that gap. Okay. On the downside, look for support here in this node from overnight. We're about to push down into it right now. So look for support in there, in that node. If we find support in that node, that's extremely bullish. Getting below the overnight low would be a little bit more bearish. You could short the overnight low and monitor for continuation, or you could wait and see where the market finds support inside of yesterday's range and look to go long there. I would say, though, if we get below this node of volume that's right around the POC here, so call it like the 42.34 level, if we break through this, it's a good trade to go repair this poor low and this weak reference that we left behind yesterday. Okay, and then monitor for continuation further down from there. But honestly, at the moment, I'm just expecting some chop. I'm expecting the market to, it's got to pull back down here, find some support, and then we likely do a bit of a grind. If that does not happen and it just continues to sell this morning, I will obviously get bearish very quickly. It's worth noting that yesterday value was lower, which is a bearish signal. So there is still a bearish momentum in the market to the downside. But that 50 moving average that I showed you earlier today, that is very, very strong support. So it could go either way today. You've got the impulse down, you've got the momentum to the downside, which could take you further, but you've also got good enough support that if the market wants to, it can trade higher today. And it's likely to get back up towards that 20 moving average, as that, again, is what it always does, right? So here it found support, took 2 days to get up there. Here it found support, took 2 days. Here it found support and rotated right back up on the same day. So you can see if this is good support on that 50 from yesterday, then it should push back up pretty quick. So I'm prepared for both scenarios. Okay, we found some support right in that first node of volume, and we're getting a little chop here. Rob, good morning to you. The gap is above us. The fill would be 43.14.25. Okay, so far it's looking good. Too early to call it bullish. We're still in that morning chop. A little bit of grind happening here. But finding support above the overnight low is bullish. The next thing we'd want to see to go long would be to get above this node of volume, come back down and find support. Then it's a long trade to continue higher. Okay? Good morning, R.K. Leon. Good morning, Gianfranco. Nirmal is here. Good morning to you. Philip, good to see you. Rad back with us. Good morning. Robbie, good morning to you. Sebastian, good morning. Cyworker, good to see you. Brian, good morning. Lex Luthor. Pavel, good morning. Noto Cactus, good morning. Metaterra, good to see you. Speedboat, good morning. De Esterostu, I will say that name different every time. Good morning to you. And Jazz, good morning to you. Choppy market. Let's jump over and take a look at the NQ. See what it's doing this morning. Looks like it's pulling back a little bit. Okay. So the NQ opened with a gap higher this morning. And so it filled the gap, continued to sell off. And it is now just starting to find support right at the upper end of this. Man, look at yesterday. That almost looks like just like a straight up balancing day. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, the NQ basically just accepted its lower prices yesterday and didn't really do much else. That's interesting. Anyway, lots of support in here. I mean, it's going to be tough to pick a specific level to go long, but literally anywhere in this giant area that the market finds support is a good long trade for a rotation back up. If the lowest volume node here at like 14,465, if that breaks, that's shorter. That's a shortable for a further downside continuation. That's a shortable. I think I just invented a new term. It's a shortable. My beautiful down arrow. Okay, the chop continues. Rob, thank you so much. Everyone, please smash that like button. Yeah. Yeah, it's a Lunchable for bears. I'd kind of like to see an actual bear eat a Lunchable. If you've ever watched videos of bears doing human stuff, like opening trash cans or stuff, it's crazy. It's so funny to watch. I'd love to see a bear try to open a Lunchable pack. Herman, good morning to you. Jane, good morning to you as well. Welcome. All right. Well, the internals remain bullish. They both bounced off the zero line. So that is positive. The morning chop kept us above the overnight low. That is also slightly bullish. Like I said, I'm still not going to enter a long trade until I either see us push up above this node, which it will probably take a bit of grinding to get through, and then come back down and find support there. That's the long trade to fill the gap. Or if the market gets up to this node and it just can't get above it, it tries to push up into yesterday's range and it just can't go anywhere, and it starts to pull back down into, it gets up into the overnight range up here, and then it pulls back down into yesterday's range. That is shortable from there for continuation lower. Okay, so there's two scenarios when we get into this node of volume right at the base of the gap. We either get above it, come back down and find support, or we get into it, find resistance, and then fail back into yesterday's range. One is a long trade, one is a short trade. Good morning, Jamie. Thank you for the heads up on the VIX expiration tomorrow, Jay. Nor Auto Trader, good to see you. Good morning. Sebastian, you don't speak English, but you like the non-stress? Well, you know what you're going to love? The singing. Wait for it. K. Rody, good morning to you. All right, well, the market's not meeting much resistance, so that is another bullish thing. So if you're keeping track, we got like 3 or 4 bullish things. So now the moment of truth. Is this resistance, or can we break it and make it support? Value today is above yesterday's value, completely above. That is bullish. So we're above that node of volume. I'm going to go ahead and get bullish here as we were able to get up into the gap, and that increases the odds that the market will try to fill that gap. But keep in mind, if we pull back down into yesterday's range, particularly, like we might need to pull back down real quick to backfill a little bit of this, where there's only like 195 contracts, 200 contracts. This will likely need to pull back in and backfill. But I would wait until this area. Previously, I'd said I'd wait. If this broke, I'd go short. I just changed my mind because we left these, low volume nodes. I'm actually going to wait for that to break before I would go short. As the market just might need to backfill that first. Okay, so that was really quick, but it did just find support right at the top of that node, which is bullish. Okay, so the push above the overnight high is bullish, but again, we just got very thin volume all in here. So the market might need to pull back and add some more volume in this section. But it wouldn't be bearish until we got below there. Okay, NQ starting to build up support here at this 14554 level, so I would keep an eye on that as the day progresses. If it pulls back down and it keeps finding support there, that's a good buy. Back to the ES. Okay, so we're likely to hit resistance when we get these nodes of volume from the overnight that created that massive sell-off. But remember, when the market gets focused on a ruling reason like filling a gap, it's very powerful. So keep that in mind. We should be able to get through these nodes of resistance, but it may take some grind to get through them. Israel, good morning to you. I don't know what Charles Payne means, but cool. Sounds like a cool nickname. Thanks, man. Oh, is that somebody from Fox Business? Yeah, you guys know me. I'll watch no financial news. I don't watch no any kind of news. I got all the information I need right here, and it's generated by the market. Yeah, baby. Okay, we're starting to push our way into a little bit of overbought territory here on the ticks. So keep that in mind. The market's creating lots of little pockets of low volume nodes. That's weakness in the market. So even though price is advertising, look at how high we're going to go. Don't you want to do business up here? Keep in mind, the market still has business to do down at these lower levels to backfill some of this. So wait till we get that resistance and expect a pullback. Charles, why does the thin volume matter? What does that have to do with anything, and why do we need to backfill it? Well, the thin volume shows that it's emotion. It's FOMO happening here this morning that's pushing the market like this. So oftentimes we need to get in there and get some stronger hands to buy in who aren't FOMOing in, right? So for example, if right now you're looking at this market and you're like, oh man, I missed my trade. I wish I would have gotten in. If the market pulls back down to here, you likely will, right? Yeah, Jay, it's a great point. Essentially, the market, the way I look at it, it's very, very high probability that it's going to fill that gap, even though it's a massive gap. Um, yeah, I'm looking at obviously the futures. So if it fills this gap and gets up there to that low at 43.14, at that point, the two-sided trade takes over again. So from there, we can continue higher or we could start selling off again. It's just sort of the gap is the first order of business. Jamie, I can do my best. So she's asking, can I explain from the shape of the profile, whether it's short covering rally, a liquidation break, whether it's old buyers or new money getting in or out? Um, okay, so as far as old money and new money is concerned, um, weak references are a common thing to look at. Or I'm sorry, like that's bigger money or shorter term traders getting in or out. So if you get a lot of weak references, that's a sign of that happening. Whereas if you have very few weak references, like yesterday, for example, I think we made like maybe 3 the whole day. Um, that's a sign that there's bigger players stepping in. Okay. So that's the first thing to think about. As far as whether it is a liquidation break or new money selling, yesterday is kind of an exception to the rule, but there's basically a couple of different types of profiles that you can get, and I'll just draw them visually over here. So you can get what's called an elongated profile, which is like, we're now talking about the volume nodes. So you get like little random volume nodes like this. Okay. And that can mean two things. This is where it gets tricky, but hear me out. It can mean two things. It can mean, one, that you're getting FOMO buyers that are just pushing the market higher, or it could mean that bigger players are stepping in at each of those nodes of volume. So how do you know which it is? Do they hold? So for example, if we never come back down for the rest of the day to test this, or never come back down to test this, then we know this is bigger money players piling on to the FOMO retail, right? And that's why we never needed to get out of it. Because if it's retail buyers that bought here, or retail buyers that bought here, they got to take profits at some point. So whenever they do, the market pulls back down. So if these nodes hold, then we know it was bigger, longer term players that were stepping in there, right? So that's one way to look at it. Another type of profile you can get is one that looks like sort of a bell-shaped curve like this. That's a rotational day. So that's a day where the market is just balancing off whatever previous excess was created in the market. And then you can get what's called a P-shaped day or a B-shaped day. Okay? The P shape is a sign that the business that pushed us up into here was just long, it was just short covering, right? It was a short covering rally, and then we rotated at the higher price to show acceptance of that, which just means there wasn't new buyers stepping in here to push us up to that level. It was just the short covering rally. So that just increases the odds the market might need to come back down and then test again, right? Same thing with the B shape, right? It's a long liquidation that then gets acceptance at lower prices, and that increases the odds the market will need to go back up and test that before it goes down again. Okay? So what we got yesterday was, it's a tricky one to read, but it is kind of a B shape, okay? See how it's coming down? Like I said, it's not the most beautiful B, but it's a B, okay? So that tells us the market might need to head back up to bring in stronger sellers if they want to continue lower, which is why I say once we get up to fill this gap, if the downtrend is going to win, if it's still intact, they'll fill the gap and then they'll start selling again, and they can sell right back through the lows from yesterday. Okay? But if we get back up to this gap, fill this gap, and then more buyers step in up here, well, then that's a sign that this was bulls buying in here yesterday and in here, boom, boom, this morning. Okay? $6K. Drinks are on you, Lewis. Congrats, brother. No, I to be honest with you, Jamie, I don't really look at it that hard. You know, I never really look at a B shape or a P shape and then like analyze how they end up afterward. I'm just such a short-term trader. I just normally think about what it means for the day, that day. As I'm seeing a P-shaped form, I'm saying to myself, okay, this was more of a long liquidation that got us up here. So I'm not going to be quite as confident that the market's going to continue higher. I might be looking to short the highs and then take profits at the POC or whatever the case may be. I don't generally think about what happens the next day or the next or anything like that. But that would be great data to start collecting. How often after a P shape does the market continue to sell off, or after a B shape sell off, or on a P shape continue higher? I just honestly don't know. Good morning, Kim. Let's take a little look-see at the NQ. Okay, NQ, obviously a little more rotational here than the ES. They are not one time framing higher. I would say if this node down here doesn't hold, look for further downside continuation. They may have to trade into that node of volume from yesterday to find good support. Back to the ES. Yeah, and about 10 times less the knowledge. Remember, all I am doing is repeating back to you guys what I learned from him. That guy understands this stuff at a depth that I will never. Is it sinking in, Rob? Like, the question is, do you start to see things that I talk about before I mention them? Right now, are you thinking to yourself, if the market can't hold up on this little node of volume, they got to backfill this level down here? That's what I'm thinking. There you go. Well, that's how it works. Yeah, Rob. That's why Jim Dalton teaches that you learn in phases, right? That you start with the market understanding. You start with being able to look at the chart and see the things I'm seeing and start to recognize, okay, what's happening in the market. And once you get good at that, at being able to tell what's going on in the market, then you develop your system for entries and exits. You develop how you trade that market. Um, so yeah, don't worry. That's you're in a totally normal place where you're starting to get better at understanding what the market's going to do, but now you have to build a set of rules that fit for you to get those entries and exits, and you just learn through trying, through practice. No futs. Do I use a trigger chart for entries or just that chart and monitor the TOS stuff? Yeah, what you see here, this is all I look at. My eyes are pretty much just glued to the profile like 90% of the time. And then when I feel like I'm thinking something, I'm like, is it doing this? Is it doing that? I pop over to the internals just to reference and get a feel. You know what I mean? So, for example, right earlier, just now, it felt like the market was trying to break this support and go back down and backfill. But now that I look over at the ticks, I see, look at how many bulls are buying here. There's way more buyers than sellers in the market. So that was just support building stronger for the next push up. Um, Israel, what do you mean when able, of course? The follow back on Instagram. Wait, did you tell me previously in the chat to follow you on Instagram? I must have missed it. Yes, sir. What's the Q going to do? Ooh, man. Still isn't breaking that A period high? Looks like they're about to, though. Yeah, I mean, look at how bullish the market is. So yeah, you get through this node right here, it should be smooth sailing from there. You got really good support in here if the market does need to pull back. So that means essentially if you were to go long here, you could put your stop in here and it would probably be safe. But I don't love this taper. That is very rotational looking. We need to bring in some pink candles up here. Bring in some volume. Okay, well, while they backfill, bring in some volume. Let's pop back to the ES. Oh, boy. All right, well, we're heading up to that next node in the overnight. It's the next bit of resistance. This was nothing. We literally pushed right through it, came back down, built up support, and continued. So this is a very bullish trend that we have intact here. They're starting to. No pink candles yet on the NQ. All right, guys, so very thin volume once again here. Likely to need to get backfilled a little bit. So once we get into this node of volume, I expect we find some resistance there and pull back into this a little bit. Build up better support. So Charles, does that mean you would go short here at the POC from the overnight, expecting a bit of a pullback? No, sir. That's not how I trade. I only go long when the market is bullish. So what I would be doing is taking profits on a long right there and then looking to re-enter the trade down here on the backfill. But I would not try to short a market that is trending higher like this. That's good to hear, Rob. Are you finding that it helps you with your trading, or is it like just an extra distraction? Okay, so once again, it looks like they need to pull back in here and backfill some of this low volume nodes. Looking for support somewhere in here. Very cool. Glad to hear it. Okay, these are the levels that like definitely need backfilling. Only 100 contracts here and 170 here. The second, no futs. I would wait for the market to pull back down here and then enter long rather than try to short it down to here, because the momentum of the trend is much, much stronger. So if I were to short it, I could be wrong and it immediately starts pushing higher. So the probability is much more in favor of going long, going with the trend down here at a better entry, right? That's the higher probability trade. So I must be willing to make, instead of trying to make the money down to here, I must be patient and then make the money up to here where it's likely that it'll keep going and make me a lot more with less risk because it's with the trend. All right, leaving these single prints behind here. It's all in that same area that I was talking about with all the low volume. Okay, increases the odds the market will need to backfill those single prints. If for whatever reason we do leave these behind today, that would be bullish as a double distribution, letting us know that the market has had a change here. And since that change was to the upside, that makes it bullish. Okay. Thank you all so much. I bid you farewell. I hope you have a great rest of your day on this Tuesday. And we look forward to seeing you all here tomorrow morning. If you're a member of the Brigade, give me about 5 minutes and I will see you on that stream. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.